Welcome into practice, everybody. This practice is going to be all about the pelvis, and in particular kind of paying attention to the natural wisdom of the pelvis. So without any further ado, go ahead and come onto your back in constructive rest pose, which just means that as you lie on your spine, your knees are bent, your feet are approximately the width of your mat, and then the inner knees come together as a sort of tent. And then I'm going to suggest for kind of our grounding integration pose that you place the hands on the lower abdomen, sort of below the belly button, around that front rim of the pelvis, kind of near where the hip points are located, and just let the hands rest there. Let your elbows and the backs of the arms settle onto the mat wherever it's most comfortable. Let the shoulders soften and the weight of the body melt into the mat. And then maybe just notice that very subtle expansion and contraction that you're feeling right below the palms of your hands, around the belly, as the breath comes in and out of the body. And the goal in this practice is to really let the wisdom of the pelvis lead each and every shape, movement, transition, asana that we create. As you take a few more natural, intuitive breaths here, feeling the breath come in, maybe imagining it floating all the way up to the top of the head. And as you exhale, feeling the breath flowing down the spine and landing in the bowl of the pelvis. Maybe just sticking with that imagery of the breath moving up the spine to the top of the head and then flowing down, circling and swirling around the bowl of the pelvis. And then without any sense of rushing, just the next time you feel an exhale completing, keep the lower belly just gently contracted. And so the next time you breathe in, there's a feeling of a little bit more expansion through the rib cage, the upper chest and collarbones. And perhaps gently constrict the muscles at the back of the throat, moving into a more audible breath that we call ujjayi, or victorious breath. From a bodily sensation point of view, this ujjayi breath, as you inhale, feels like you're sucking in through a straw, but with the mouth closed. And as you exhale, similar to fogging a mirror, but again, the mouth is still closed. And just staying with this ujjayi for a couple more rounds and seeing if you can continue to cultivate that ujjayi throughout the practice. At the base of your next exhale, we'll start to move into our warm-up sequence by separating the inner knees, walking the feet in approximately hip distance apart so the thighs are now parallel, and start to rock your pelvis forward and back as if you were doing a cat and cow on your spine, feeling the pelvis tilting forward, almost like you create a bridge with your low back, nice and spacious, and then tilting the pelvis back, and you feel the tailbone almost lift slightly, and just rock forward and back at your own pace, about 3 to 4 more times. And then landing in a neutral position, I want you to imagine what we would call a wagging of the dog or a wagging of the tail position. So you're going to lift your right hip bone up towards the bottom of your right rib cage. So you're contracting the right side of the waist, expanding the left, and then switch left hip point towards the bottom of the left rib cage. And just going side to side. If you were on all fours, we would call this the wagging the dog or the wagging the tail position, creating like a C shape with the sides of the spine as you alternate from right to left. Just doing that about 2 more times on each side. And then once again, landing in that neutral position, and then thinking of like if you were initiating a twist. So if you were twisting to the right, it's like your right hip is going to drop into the mat, your left hip is going to get light as if your pelvis was initiating the twist, and then go the opposite direction. Left hip drops into the mat, right hip gets light. So you're rocking the pelvis from left to right, kind of as if it were going to initiate a twist. And just stick with that for another 1 or 2 more motions from right to left. And then see if you can take this into some nice big circles with the pelvis, rolling in each direction. So you're kind of feeling all of those different directions we just explored, moving the pelvis in a clockwise direction. And then reversing that counterclockwise, maybe feeling that friction as your tailbone is kind of rubbing against the surface of your yoga mat or your yoga pants, getting a little bunched up with this motion. And then hugging the right knee in towards the chest will take this warm up into a little bit bigger movement. Let the right knee slide up towards your right armpit. Really squeeze the right thigh towards the front of the torso. And as you breathe here for another breath or two, notice how the pelvis is kind of tilted back. That's fine. Don't change it. That's that natural intuition of the pelvis knowing that when we go into a forward folding orientation, the pelvis needs to rotate in this way. Half happy baby, take your right hand to the outer edge of your right foot and then gently encourage the top of the right thigh to melt down towards the floor. We're going to take some dynamic movement here. So as you inhale, press your right foot up towards the ceiling, maybe partially, maybe fully straightening the knee. Exhale, pull it back down into that half happy baby. And just take that about 3 more times, inhaling to press and straighten the knee, exhaling to pull down. Getting a little bit into the hamstring here. One more of these dynamic movements here, just getting into the leg, and then we'll come into our reclined pigeon pose. Right ankle over left knee. Gently push your right knee away from you. We're going to come straight in, either interlacing the hands behind the left thigh, or if you want a little bit more, you could straighten that left leg, reaching up and interlacing the hands behind the left calf. And noticing how the pelvis is tilting back, so your tailbone is light here. That's fine. Don't fight that. That's that natural intuition of your pelvis knowing this is the way that the pelvis needs to rotate forward over the femur when we come into forward flexion. Start to release that, coming into a spinal twist, figure 4. Keep your legs as they are as you drop your left foot to the mat, and then drop the legs in that same shape over to the left. The sole of my right foot finds the floor. For me, I like to take my left hand and just gently hold onto the outer edge of my right foot and then take my right arm out to the side, palm facing down. You could even turn your head looking towards the right hand. Let your right knee lift up towards the ceiling. And for me, this is a really intense and yet very delicious stretch in my outer right hip. So I'm going to enjoy it for one more full breath. And then just to get a little bit of energetic flow in the body, we're going to come through our first vinyasa. So turn the head towards the ceiling, let the spine come back onto the mat, uncross that right ankle, give yourself a brief little hug like you're in a child's pose on your spine. And then you're going to rock and roll up and all the way through to your first plank pose. So the palms are going to plant, you're going to step yourself back to your first plank. And for a moment, just pause here in this plank. And maybe you actually play with the pelvis a little bit here. Maybe you tilt it forward, like you let those front sitting bones kind of, or front hip points drop towards the mat, almost like you were going to tent your hips. Just feel that. And then go the opposite direction. Really tuck your tailbone towards your hips, almost to the point that you squeeze your glutes. And then find that natural midpoint where you're not tenting, but you're not overly tucking. And that's that natural, intuitive place we want to be with the pelvis. Full in-breath here. Exhale all the way down through chaturanga, down to the mat. Untuck your toes. As you press up into your first cobra, I want you to think of lifting your tailbone towards the ceiling. I know that may sound totally crazy, but I want you to think of liberating the low back, lifting the tailbone towards the ceiling, release that cobra, press up and back to your first downward facing dog, and give yourself 3 breaths there before we come back onto our spine for the second side of the warm-up sequence. Our pelvis is really the center of our creative energy. So when we connect with and care for the space of the pelvis, we really tap into our deepest source of strength, but also of vitality. It's like the house of our life force.
look to the center of your mat. You could walk, you could step, or you could hop through, bringing the hips back to the mat, landing on your spine. Once again, feet about hip distance apart, and invite your left knee and thigh in towards the belly, letting that left knee float up towards the left armpit, squeezing in. And again, noticing how that tailbone wants to float up, because this is flexion. We're pulling that left thigh in. The pelvis has to rotate this way. It knows it naturally. Half happy baby, left hand to the outer edge of the left foot. Invite the top of the left thigh down. Let the pelvis lift a little bit here. And then dynamic movement. Inhale, straightening to whatever degree is available. And exhale, inviting down. And just moving with that a few times at the pace of your natural breath. I'm feeling that this side of my body's feeling a little tighter, so I'm keeping a soft bend in this knee. I'm not going to force anything. I know the body will naturally open in its own time. I can trust it. And then I'm going to take into my Supta Kapottasana, reclined pigeon pose, left ankle over that right knee. And then inviting my hands either behind the right thigh, if that feels good, or again, the option to straighten the right leg, interlacing behind the calf muscle. And sometimes we fight the natural intuition of the body. In particular, the pelvis. The pelvis is kind of the central fulcrum of the body. The spine goes through the pelvis. The femurs, the thigh bones plug into the pelvis. So the origin of almost every movement in the body comes from the pelvis. We're going to start to release that right foot, uncross, coming through our second vinyasa, rocking forward and up, hands plant, stepping back to that plank position, taking a moment, checking in. I'll get that twist on the second side as we move through our sun salutations. Don't worry about that. Find that position where you're neither tenting nor tucking the pelvis. Take one in-breath there. Nice, strong, intuitive, neutral position. Lower through chaturanga all the way to the mat. Untuck the toes. Cobra pose. Lifting that tailbone up towards the ceiling as you find your first Bhujangasana. Take one more breath in here. Exhale, release, press it up and back. Downward facing dog. We are going to start to shift into the sun salutation portion of the practice. I'll make sure we throw in a figure 4 twist on that left side so that we make sure we find that equanimity with that particular shape. And we're going to start to build our Surya Namaskaram from right here in downward facing dog. But before we do that, I want you to take a moment, lift your head, look up at your hands. For me, it's my pointer finger that's pointing towards the front of my mat. And then imagine your hands are on either basketballs or pickle jar lids. And I want you to either palm your basketball so the pads of your fingertips grip your mat. And then with your pickle jar lids, the right hand is like trying to unscrew it to the right. Left hand is screwing it to the left. Keep that action of externally rotating the arms as you lift the pelvis and push back into your downward facing dog. And then connect with your tailbone. I want you to invite your tailbone to lift up towards the ceiling. Feel how that invites a little bit more awareness into the upper attachment of the hamstrings. Take one more breath in here. Exhale, drop the knees to the mat. Move the right thumb to the left thumb. Step that right foot forward. Find a relatively shallow lunge. Walk the hands up onto the right thigh. Now take a moment here. Place your right hand on your lower belly, left hand on your low back. And kind of how we did in our plank, I want you to just over-exaggerate what it would look like to tilt your pelvis forward. We don't want to be there. Now really strongly tuck the tailbone. We also don't want to be there. We want this nice, neutral, kind of happy medium place. Good. And then start to glide forward and back. And I want you to notice when you go forward, your pelvis is going to tilt this way, and you don't need to fight that because your back is going into a little bit of a back bend. So the tailbone's going to move back. You can let that happen, but you can feel it against your hands, how the low back and the tailbone pushes back. Next time you drop forward, stay there. Sweep your arms down, forward, and up. Feel this beautiful sense of a back bend happening so that tailbone is moving down and back, And then there's this beautiful C curve through the spine. Take one more in-breath here. Exhale, release the hands. Step your right knee back next to left knee. 8-pointed pose, Ashtangasana. Tuck your toes, knees are down, chest between the thumbs. We've got our 8 points of contact. Notice how the tailbone's lifted, the pelvis is tilted forward. Untuck the toes, slither to the belly, lift up into your cobra. Feel that tailbone lifting, pushing back, downward facing dog. Take a moment right here. We're going to add in that twist just to find that equanimity that we missed in that warm-up. So look to the center of your mat, hop through to seated. Come onto your spine, knees are bent. Cross left ankle over the right knee. And then keeping that figure 4 shape, drop the legs to the right. Right hand could hook around the pinky side edge of that left foot if that helps you stabilize the pose. Left arm reaches out to the left. Maybe the head turns to look towards the left arm. Energetically inviting that left knee to draw upwards towards the ceiling. And trusting that your body is going to land exactly where it needs to land in this shape for you to get the maximum out of it. And then coming out of this, turning the head back up to the ceiling, releasing the right hand, legs come back to center, crossing the ankles as you rock through, plant the palms, step it back to downward facing dog. We'll do the second side of that sun salutation, dropping the knees, moving left thumb to right thumb as we step that left foot forward, hands walking up onto the left thigh. And then left hand on belly, right hand on low back. So I'm giving myself feedback. This is like a self-adjustment. I'm feeling that neutral. I'm not moving, rolling forward. I'm not overly tucking. But then as I start to glide, I feel how the pelvis naturally wants to kind of rotate forward. And we're going to let that happen. We're not going to fight that intuition of the body to know that's what it needs to do to protect your low back and to access the shape. Stay in that low lunge. Drop the arms down, forward, up. Feeling that beautiful proportional back bend happening all the way through the body. Take one more in-breath there. Exhale, hands reach down. Step the right foot forward to meet the left. Inhale, lift up halfway. Pause here for a moment, and I want you to really feel how the pelvis is rolling forward over the femurs. Femurs are the thigh bones. Pelvis is rotating forward, which is what's giving us access to the forward fold. The pelvis is actually where this forward fold initiates. Take one more inhale here. Keep rolling the pelvis forward as you drop your head and recommit to folding forward over the legs. Now as we come to rise to standing, sweep your arms forward, up, back. And as you come into the back bend, I want you to actually let your tailbone go back just a little bit, because again, if we tuck, it's actually really counterintuitive for the body. We need to let the pelvis kind of extend back a little bit in our back bend and then come back, hands to heart center. Release the arms, stand tall, take your full breath in. Exhale, hands to heart center. And if you start listening to me and you're like, this is confusing, I don't know what we're doing, your body actually naturally knows how to do this. So bottom line thesis, just don't fight the wisdom of the body. Sweep the arms forward, up, and back. Notice what your pelvis naturally wants to do in the back bend. Forward fold. Let the pelvis fold over the femurs. Step the right foot back. Drop your right knee. Step your left foot out to the side so that you're in a horizontal horse lunge. And then same thing, one hand to belly, one hand to low back. Find that sense of kind of intuitive neutral and start to glide out and in a few times. Nice. And noticing here, the pelvis doesn't move nearly as much. When we're going in this direction, the pelvis can stay relatively stable. Not nearly as much movement as the other time. Stay out. Find your warrior 2 on your knees. So you're extending the arms. Gaze is over the middle finger of that left hand.
We're going to transition into gate pose from here, closed gate to be specific. So coming out as you straighten your left knee, turn the left toes forward, drop left hand to left leg, laterally bending to the left as you find that Padangusthasana closed gate position. Looking down towards the mat, walk your hands down and around in front of you. Inhale, lengthen your spine tall. Exhale, drop your hips back towards that right heel. So it's like a hybrid of an inner thigh stretch and a child's pose. And then we're going to thread the needle here. So we're going to take the right arm, thread it underneath the left towards that left foot, getting this nice twist in the spine. If you want to take a half bind with the upper body, you could reach that left arm towards the ceiling. Maybe internally rotate the arm, rest it on the low back, or even find that tuck in with the right inner thigh. And then releasing that left arm if you had a bind here. Unwinding that right arm, inhale, shift forward. Bring your left knee next to your right. I'm just turning so that I'm facing the correct side of the mat. Walk your hands up to your waist. Ustrasana camel pose. And I'm going to really let you choose your depth. So some people like to keep the hands on the low back here. Some people like to tuck the toes. So really figuring out how do you need to set yourself up. You could always widen the knees here. And then as we inhale, start to lift through the sternum. Let the pelvis slide forward, but also let the pelvis kind of initiate the back bend. You could keep hands on low back. You could release one or both hands, finding your Ustrasana, maybe releasing the head, breathing 2. One more breath. Straight into 8-pointed pose. Lift through the heart, tucking the toes, knees, hands, chest, chin, Ashtangasana. Slide to the belly, lift up, cobra. Press up and back, downward facing dog. Palm your basketballs. Find your pickle jar lids, externally rotating the arms. Tilting the pelvis forward over the femurs as you lift the tailbone up. Melting the heels down. Inhale, looking forward, stepping the right foot forward, left knee comes down, stepping that right foot out to the side as you find your little horse lunge, hand to belly, hand to low back, giving yourself that feedback as you're gliding out and in. Nice. And then staying out in that low warrior 2. Some people call this like a half warrior 2. Some people call it a floor version. You can call it whatever you want to call it. Take one more breath right here. And then slowly straightening into our gate pose, turning those right toes forward. Right hand drops down to the right leg, lateral bend. And for me, I'm noticing a few things. So sometimes I get like overly vigorous in my practice and I'm like squeezing my bum so much here that I almost like lock up what I can do. I have to have a little softness in my glutes in order to access this lateral bend. At the same time, I don't want to totally collapse and have my hips super far back. So it's finding that kind of Goldilocks of letting my body follow its intuition while still being mindful and awake in the pose. Look down at the mat, walk the hands down and towards the front. Inhale, pull the heart forward, exhale, sit it back. Enjoying that nice inner thigh stretch in that right thigh. And then we're gonna thread the needle, threading left arm underneath the right, so you're moving that left hand towards the right foot. My left temple comes down to rest on the floor. And then option to take a half bind here. The right arm can lift to the ceiling, wrap around the low back. Maybe it kind of finds that little pocket of space, that little nook between your left inner thigh and the left side of your torso. Taking one more breath here. I just had the thought that crossed my mind that like it just feels really good to be in my body right now. How nice that is. Unravel the right arm, walk the hands forward.
No Ustrasana here, as we just step back to a downward facing dog, and we're just going to close out this side. So looking forward, you could walk, you could step, you could take a nice little hop, whatever travel looks like for you right now. Inhale, lift up halfway, pause for a breath. Connect with your pelvis. What is it doing right now? Are you listening to the pelvis, how it needs to move? Exhale, fold in, enjoy that deep forward fold. And then sweeping the arms forward, up. In that back bend, let the pelvis move. It doesn't need to be super static, hands to heart center. Releasing the arms, standing tall, full inhale. Exhale, hands to heart center. Inhale, reaching forward, up, back. Exhaling to fold. Left leg is going to lead. Step it back. We're setting up for pyramid pose. So I have about 3.5 to 4 feet between my front right foot and my back left foot. I'm going to spin my left heel down at about a 45-degree angle. And I'm going to come all the way up. So I'm going to walk my hands up my right leg, stand up nice and tall. I'm going to take my hands to my waist, pull my right hip back, left hip forward. Now I want your hands kind of, so the pelvis has this nice little iliac crest that is sort of curved, and our hands can actually kind of rest on it. So see if you can kind of find your iliac crest. It's that top ridge of the pelvis. And then you can actually feel, and also you can even look down at your hands. We don't want the hands to be tilted forward where the fingers are pointing down, but we also don't want the thumbs pointed down as if we're tucking back. We want a nice kind of flat positioning with the hands. Good. This is our starting point. Now as we start to move forward, your pelvis is naturally going to tilt forward. The fingertips are going to start to drop towards the floor. You might even have your right fingertips touch your right thigh. When your pelvis stops moving, pause and take a full breath. And as you inhale, think of lengthening your spine forward towards the wall in front of you. And then exhale, either walk your hands down your right leg or drop them to the floor. And finally, let your head release. But notice how this whole pose, alpha point, the place that it began, was when we started to tilt that pelvis forward. Take 2 more breaths here. You're probably really feeling this high up in the hamstring. That's exactly where you should be feeling it. We're going to play with flamingo pose here. So turn your fingertips to face your back of your mat and walk your hands back until your elbows straighten. Pivot onto the ball of your left foot and hop your left foot in about 4 to 5 inches. And then try to create a triangle of weight distribution between the pads of your fingertips and your right foot. Connect your left inner knee to your right and kick your left heel to your glute. Lean back into your hands a little bit so you're at a slight diagonal for 2. Beautiful flamingo pose. Relax your face. Last breath in. And then stepping back for a vinyasa. Plant your palms. Find a plank position. Pause for a moment. Feel that nice, intuitive, wise neutrality in the pelvis. Chaturanga this time. Lowering to that half push-up. Rolling over the toes, upward facing dog. Pause for a moment in your up dog. I want you to think of lifting your tailbone just a little bit. Now lift your chin. Push down through the palms and then lift your seat and let your pelvis pull you back to downward facing dog. Take a full breath in, tapping into that deep source of strength and vitality. Second side, looking forward, step the left foot in between the thumbs. You've got about 3.5 to 4 feet of space. Step that right foot at a 45-degree angle. Now we're going to come up. Walk the hands up the left leg. So start from a baseline. Get your hands around that iliac crest and check in. I'm a little tilted forward, so I know I need to kind of start in a neutral place. And then as I start to come into the pose, I let the pelvis move first. My fingers kind of rock down. And then when my pelvis stops moving, I'm going to pause and take a nice full breath in, wherever that is, and then let my hands either walk down my left leg, maybe they land on blocks, maybe they find the floor. My head is the last thing to relax. The pelvis is wise. See if you can let the pelvis lead. Stop trying to control the poses so much and instead start trusting your body's intuition. Flamingo pose. Turn the fingertips to face the back of your mat and walk the hands back till the elbows straighten. This one's fun. Let it be fun. Pivot onto the ball of the right foot. Hop the right foot in a little bit. Okay. Now we need to create a triangular base between the 10 pads of my fingers and my left foot. And then I'm going to shift my body weight forward, connect my inner knees, kick my right heel to my right glute, lean back a little bit for 2. This is mega hamstring. I am feeling it. One more in-breath. And then lower that right foot. Right foot meets the left, forward fold, reaching the arms forward, up and back. Hands to heart center. One salutation, classic 12 movements to flow it out. Release the arms, stand tall. Exhale, hands to heart center. That's 1. You know what you're doing. Flowing forward, up and back, that's 2. Over the legs, here we go, that's 3. Right foot's gonna lead, step it back. You decide low lunge or high lunge, whatever feels good to you, breathe in. Down dog's gonna be position 5. Decide if you wanna do 8-pointed pose or plank through chaturanga, either a cobra or an up dog. You're back in your down dog, that's 9. Right foot's gonna step forward, lunge of your choice. Beautiful. Stepping forward, folding. Up and back, that's 11. Close it out, that's 12. Drop your seat, find a chair pose, sitting down, Utkatasana. Okay, if we were doing a pelvis class, then I would you know that we have to do this pose, which is we have to do revolved chair pose. So from revolved chair, where are we gonna start? We're gonna start with our pelvis, which means if I'm taking my left elbow to my right knee, I'm not gonna wrench my low back. I'm gonna let my left hip glide forward ever so slightly, which gives me easier access to hooking that left elbow. Palms come together, push the right palm down into the left. Lift the right elbow to the ceiling, the right shoulder to the ceiling. Let your belly button move to the right. And then breaking all the yoga rules. You know, I'm a little bit of a rogue yoga teacher on this one. The left knee can be in front of the right knee a little bit here. Left hip in front of the right hip a little bit here. One more big breath. Look down and just let that all go, forward fold. Maybe widen your feet a little bit, just kind of sway a little bit side to side, whatever feels good. I'm gonna drop into a brief malasana between sides. So for me, I need more space in my yogi squat. So I gotta widen my feet even more. If that's you, take it, and then drop on down to your yogi squat. Inner arms, inner elbows to the inner knees. Thumbs move towards the sternum. This position is like dessert for your pelvis. It's this yummy, neutral spa space where your pelvis just can totally release any tension. This is kind of like a massage version of a yoga pose for your pelvis. So really yummy. Take one more breath here before we do that revolved chair on the second side. And then drop the hands, start to lift your seat. Heel toe your feet back in if they were widened, like mine were. And then we're gonna come to classic chair first. So start to bend the knees, sink the hips, lift up to your Utkatasana. And then, okay, pelvis is the origin. It's the alpha part of the pose. So as I start to drop down, I'm gonna let my right hip come forward a little bit. That makes this twist so much easier to access. Right elbow outside the left knee. Stack the left palm, and then really push the left palm into the right. Lift left elbow, lift left shoulder. Move the belly button to the left. You've got 3 more breaths here. You've got this. And for me, this makes the pose so much more enjoyable because it doesn't feel nearly as constrained. It feels a little bit more spacious. Last in breath. And then drop the hands, and again, just kind of spill it all forward in a way that feels good, letting go of some of that effort. And then I'm gonna let you choose. This next 2 minutes is really a combination of if you wanna work on arm balances or inversions, or a combination of the two. So you could do crow. You could do crow to headstand. You could just do headstand. You could chill out in your malasana if your pelvis just wants some spa time. Totally good. I've got the clock right behind me. I'm minding it. You've still got 90 seconds. This is your playtime. Think of this as like the playground moment of the practice. Just playing with whatever feels good in your body today. Whatever you're playing with, I encourage you to really stay connected with how the pelvis is responding to the pose that you're working with or the series of poses, and see if you can really let the pelvis kind of have the steering wheel. Let it really kind of initiate what it is that you're working on. Last about 4 breaths. It's about last 20 seconds. So nice full deep breaths. If you find that you're done, just know that we're going to transition to our abdomen from here, belly down. So over the next couple of breaths, everybody can start to make their way onto their mat. Belly's going to come down. Nice. And we're going to bring the arms out in front of us. I'm going to slide back on my mat a little bit so I have space for you to see this. I want your palms to be down. Arms out in front of you. Bring kind of your, what am I trying to say? Your forehead down to the mat. I tucked my mat in because I want you to be able to see this. Really extend your legs behind you. Big toes do not have to touch here. They can even be the width of your mat if that gives your low back a little bit more freedom. And then as you inhale, I want you to lift your head, your neck, your chest, your shoulders. Keep your legs down, but slide your palms back. So it's almost like you're in a seal position. Legs are active, and instead of really activating the glutes, I want you to kind of let the tailbone lift a little bit here, but lift the navel at the same time. Navel towards spine, and then exhale, slide back forward and down. We're going to do that 3 more times. So you inhale, lift, feel those muscles of the back, activate, slide the palms in. Exhale, push away and slide away. Take that 2 more times. Inhale, pull it in, slide. Exhale. Last time, inhale, pull it in. Now, if this is enough, stay right here, please. You don't have to go any farther. If you want to go and experiment with something else, bend the knees 90 degrees, flex your feet towards the ceiling, and just imagine pushing your feet up towards the ceiling. And whoo, I feel like everything in my body is working right now. Maybe smile if you can activate the smile. 1 more in-breath. And then gently relax the shins, slide those palms forward. Bend the elbows, palms underneath you, and press up to all 4s. Take a moment. You may need a cat or cow in that all 4s. We're going back to child's pose, but that's a massive transition to go from what we just did to child's pose. So you may need to move it out a little bit. And then when your low back feels ready, start to invite the hips back to the heels, child's pose. Nice. Beautiful. Walking the hands up and in, setting up for Bharadvajasana. So we're in a hero's pose to begin with, but for Bharadvajasana, I'm going to drop my right hip off of my heels. And then this may seem a little bit strange. I want you to think of pulling your right hip back a little bit. Left hand to right outer knee, right hand behind you. Inhale, get tall. Exhale, start to twist open Bharadvajasana. Good. Now, as you breathe in this pose, we're here for like 30 seconds, so we have some time. I want you to think of pushing your outer right thigh down into the mat. As you push your outer right thigh down into the mat, also push your left knee forward. Yeah. So the left hip actually moves forward as the right hip is kind of moving back, and then rotate, soften your right shoulder. Turn your chin over your right shoulder. Keep moving left knee forward, right hip back.
And then inhale, slowly look forward. And slowly release the twist. Come back to center. Pause for a moment. So did you feel that? So when we're on that side, I'm just taking a little 30-second pause. It's this, I'm twisting away from that left leg. That left knee is like driving energetically forward, which actually pulls that opposite hip back, which deepens the twist. So it's actually twisting the pelvis. Other side. Drop the left hip over to the left. Good. Right hand goes to outer left knee, left hand's behind you. Inhale, get tall first. Now as you exhale, left thigh is rooted down, but the right knee is driving forward, which is going to pull your left hip back, and you're going to twist, 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 twist. Really let the chin roll over that left shoulder. Keep driving that right knee forward, left hip back. And then slowly coming out of that twist, we're going to make our way back onto our spine, closing the practice. We're going to close with twisted roots. So a really nice, yummy twist on our backs. So drawing both knees in towards the chest. And then cross right thigh over left. If you want to make full eagle legs here, you can. And both legs are going to fall to the right. Belly can start to release that ujjayi breath if you still had it. And then slowly coming back to center, we're going to unravel the legs. Maybe you give them a brief little squeeze, thighs in towards the abdomen. And then twisted roots, other side, left thigh over right. Legs are going to fall to the left. Again, releasing any breath control, returning to that completely natural, intuitive breath. Coming back to center. Any final movement you need, maybe squeezing in the knees, Pavanamuktasana, maybe it's a final happy baby pose. Anything so that you can be able to enjoy this moment of rest and shavasana that we're about to shift into. You are ready to listen to your body and honor it with reverence. Moving into that position of shavasana and allowing the body to rest. The pelvis is the center of our creative energy. When we connect with and care for this space, we tap into our deepest source of strength and vitality. You are ready to listen to your body and honor it with reverence. Without moving your body, allow the breath to naturally deepen. And then begin to gently lift your hands and once again place them on the front of your pelvis, below the belly button, beneath those hip points. And just as we began this practice, feeling the natural rise and fall of the breath. Breathing in, imagining the breath moving up the spine to the top of the head. And breathing out, allowing it to trickle down the spine, swirling and landing in the bowl of the pelvis. The pelvis, the origin of all creation. A place of deep wisdom and intuition. When you feel ready to start to leave your Shavasana, allow the movement of the body to gently increase. Maybe wiggling the toes or reaching the arms overhead for a full body stretch. And then eventually, in your own way, in your own time, making your way back up to a comfortable seat. To close the practice, we'll bring the palms of the hands together as we always do, asking that the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light, which sounds like these 4 words in Sanskrit. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Victory to all of our practices.